anything really. Just set a lineup that I will pretty much give you on this show and throw it in a 50-50, throw it in a tournament, throw it in whatever you like, play through it, and it is yours. And boom, you got a nice free dinner, a nice 50, 60, 70 tacos from Jack in the Box, depending on what the sales tax is in your jurisdiction. But yeah, no, just free money pretty much right off the bat. You put it in, and then you can withdraw, or you can keep playing and make even more money. We're going to be running the shows a few times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, as of right now. So stay tuned for those. But you got any questions, go ahead and drop them in chat. Let me know what you want to know on the show, what you want to have in the future on this show, and any questions you got on today's slate if you're watching it live. But yeah, we're going to be breaking things down. And also, we're going to have a raffle. As you know, Superdraft got acquired or partnered or whatever it is with Caesars Entertainment. So we're running a raffle. 10,000, 100,000, a lot of Caesars Entertainment points, whatever it is, to be used at any Caesars Entertainment resort across the U.S. There's 45 of them, most of them in Vegas. Wonderful places that I love to stay at, but essentially worth $1,000 towards any Caesars Entertainment resort. So again, use that promo code Grinders, go through the link, get free money. But we got a nice little slate today. As you can see, I've created this nice little Excel document. All it is using, boom, RG projections, swapped in all the multipliers here. So we got all this information here, all the RG projections here, and boom, just spits out the median, floor, and ceiling projection for each position. If you don't know Superdraft, you can put anyone you want in any one of your lineups pretty much. You get 3 guards, 3 forwards, 1 center. You can use across any single game. You can play literally the best players from every game, or you can play some of the worst with big multipliers. Every single score is calculated by taking the score based on their format, which is a mix between DraftKings and FanDuel. 3 points for steals, 3 points for blocks, -1 for turnovers, like FanDuel, and then like DraftKings, 3.5 points for the three-pointer. Same thing for assists and rebounds, and then you get the double-double bonus, but it's all based on a multiplier, so whatever their ending score is, based on that, for instance, John Wall, you take his ending score, multiply it by 1.45, and boom, you got that. Whereas a guy like Embiid, however many points he gets is what he gets because he's that 1x multiplier. So it's not always advantageous to play the best guys, although they are on a more consistent basis, the better plays, especially over in cash, but different on a slate to slate. Like tonight, it just is what it is. Like there are some decent multipliers. They tighten things up. So a guy like Embiid is a fantastic play going up against the turnstile defense of Boogie. He's at a 1x multiplier, but still we see that he has the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, 8th highest median projection. Not the highest ceiling because of that multiplier, but definitely a guy that's very much in play. But you see the guys in blue, that is essentially my cash game core as of right now. Things will change throughout the day. I know we have a lot of stuff on the Denver game that we'll dig into a little bit later in the show, but the Denver guys, Jokic should be the main contributor without Barton likely playing, without Harris likely playing, without a few guys likely playing. He's going to be the mainstay of that offense going up against a terrible Washington defense that's incredibly fast-paced. If you didn't already know, if you're playing on DraftKings with FanDuel, once it locks over there, boom, Superdraft takes off the first game, so lock is a half hour later. So you got more time to build lineups, or just swap over to Superdraft. Once you're done with your other ones, you can play them all. You can do everything you want. But let's get started here with a breakdown. And if you got, again, any questions on today's slate, go ahead and ask over on the YouTube chat. I'll be looking at that throughout the show, where I have one. Can we get that spreadsheet? No, you can't. I create it myself. You can create it yourself if you want. It's pretty much just like sum if functions. You take the name, you take the multiplier, and you have a range, criteria, sum range, and the criteria and sum range is just the name over here, and then the floor, ceiling, and regular fantasy points projections that you can download over on Rotogrinders. Create a nice little Excel sheet for the spread, floor, median, ceiling. Maybe one of these days soon, I'll teach you how to create a spreadsheet. I was an accountant not too long ago, so learned all that quite a while ago, but let's go ahead and get to the breakdown here. We'll start off with center. You only get one center, so it's a very important position. Great way to differentiate, because right now we have Jokic. Very low multiplier, but clearly the highest median and the highest floor on this slate, because let's be honest, it's a matchup versus Washington, and Jokic is just absolutely on a tear, especially when it comes to fantasy so far this year. So he's the main guy that you absolutely want in cash, no matter what. Like, he is the top guy. There are guys that can outscore him, but we just look at the median projection here. Looking at the ceiling percentage, ceiling projection, so top 80% outcome. Most of these guys' ceiling isn't that much higher than his median projection, what he's going to hit 50% of the time. So Jokic, top play in cash, probably the top play in tournament, even though he's going to come in at fairly high ownership. But if you want a guy at low ownership, there are a few options. So the biggest one, obviously Plumlee, super high multiplier of 1.7, matchup versus Chicago, one of the worst defensive teams, especially against big guys, and one of the faster pace teams in the league so far this year. Huge multiplier. A guy I'll probably be throwing in at a forward position a lot in Superdraft because he is center and power forward eligible, meaning he can go with both. But Plumlee, definitely a guy that's in a cash game core for me in all likelihood, and is also in my tournament builds. But he's a fantastic play. Embiid, same thing, 1x multiplier, but matchup versus Boogie, who not great, not great defensively. He can get it done for fantasy. He can absolutely put up a ton of stats, but we don't know if he's going to get run in the fourth quarter, which is why you kind of look at his median, his floor, and his ceiling projection. We don't know if he's going to only play 24 minutes or if he's going to play 30. They don't have a lot of big guys, and Embiid is tough to stop, but Boogie just can't really stop him. So 1.65x multiplier, super high considering what he can do. But again, the minutes are all over the place. Actually, they've been pretty consistent. He's just been playing three quarters, and then halfway through the third, gets yanked. He's done for the game. Don't run him out in the fourth, but they do need some height on this one. There is a chance that he gets run in the fourth quarter. And in case if he does, or just playing 24 minutes, he can go for 50 points. He can get 2 fantasy points per minute, especially over on Superdraft. And at this multiplier, as you see, his ceiling, highest of any center on the slate. So I'm still willing to take a shot on him in tournaments. Definitely will have some ownership in him and hope that he ends up getting run because they do stagger Embiid's minutes. They kind of put him in with the starting lineup, take him out after a few minutes, then put him in when they yank out Simmons or they yank out Tobias Harris. So a little bit of a staggered run for him. You could see slightly more minutes for Boogie when Embiid comes out the game because Boogie is pretty big defensive liability, but he could end up with a lot of minutes here. Valanciunas, they lowered his multiplier because he's been playing a decent amount of minutes. Still a lot of guys that are out for Memphis, so 1.35x multiplier. Not bad for him. He can put up a 50-point fantasy outing, which at his multiplier, if he puts up 50 points, he's likely higher scoring than Jokic. Collins, same thing, bigger multiplier. His run and Capella runs kind of go against each other. Tice has already been ruled out, so they might not need Capella, or they may end up giving Capella more run because it is more of a mismatch. So see his mean projection, 51, a whole 12 points lower than Joker. And his ceiling, not that much higher than Joker, but he can get there. Outside of that, like Cantor, always a high ceiling guy. Bam, low multiplier, but a good matchup versus Golden State. You can take a shot at him in tournaments. Gobert with the 3 points for stocks and the decent multiplier of 1.25. He's in play for tournaments. Same thing, Turner, Capella, Sabonis at 1x multiplier, more of a cash game play. Matchup versus Minnesota is good for him, so he can hit 60. But a lot of these guys are strictly in play for tournaments, just kind of the way that it is. I don't know why Horford's projections aren't showing up here. Let me figure that out. I'm not really certain, but that could have been left over from last night. Yeah, it looks like no, Wednesday, it's still on tonight. I don't know why this isn't showing up. Let me check here. I'm going to go ahead and rerun the RG projections now that the injury report has been put in place. But this, as you can see, this is literally a spreadsheet that we get from the lineup HQ. So we download this file, open up the file, literally going to copy and paste it over here. Maybe we can get out a Google document to help you create this so you can just pretty much copy and paste. But essentially, I'm copying right here, boom, pasting it over here, boom, updated projections, go over here. And I don't know why this is not showing up. It's a little bit interesting. Going to try this out. I don't know why this it happened right before this show. So sorry about this, guys, but rolling here. Scrolling down. Is Horford on the injury report? Is that why? Boom. Did that. Going over here. Checking to see if Horford's on the injury report. Again, the injury report just came out before this show, so we don't yet have it. Maybe he's planning on sitting because the second in a back-to-back. I don't know, but we may just not have RG projections for him. We're going to check the RG projections page. Again, any different. All right, Horford's not showing up. What am I missing? Is Horford out? If anyone's in chat that knows if Horford is out or not, then I might have missed it. Looks like he's playing. So Horford is probably going to be one of the better plays if he is playing. We don't have a report on that, but he's at a 1.45x multiplier. I don't know why things change, but they are what they are. In any case, let's move on. So that's basically center. Let's move over to forward. We got some interesting stuff today. So again, forward, Draymond, 1.55x multiplier. He's been running at the 5. He's been facilitating a whole lot. Probably matches up decently well against Bam, so we can expect over 30 minutes for him here at this multiplier, especially with blocks and steals being worth more, where he has contributed a lot more in the last 10 games as prior in the season. Plumlee, him, and probably Embiid are going to be the cash game core for you. 3 guys that you're probably throwing in your cash game lineup, but not going to argue with Zion or an Ingram. They've been doing a lot better lately. New Orleans running at a higher pace, even with a lower multiplier. They do have more of a ceiling going up against Portland, which is one of the best fantasy matchups on the board for any team. So, what's the name this morning? All right, yeah, Horford is doubtful. Did not hear that yet. Might have come out right before the show. Yeah, but basically, he's all these guys very much in play. Watch out for the Denver news. So I'm actually going to go ahead and look at all the Denver players, what we have projected now and what they could potentially be at. So we go ahead, go over here, pop this, boom, Denver players. So right now, Jokic and Miles Porter or Michael Porter Jr. are both the 2 main guys. So Michael Porter Jr., we know that he's a big scorer. We know that he can do a ton in terms of fantasy production while he's on the floor if he gets hot, especially in a high-paced matchup versus Washington. Jamal Murray, another guy that has been injured most of the season, but always shows a little bit of upside, can get shooting, and a 1.4x multiplier definitely in play. JaMychal Green, Campazzo was an interesting one. Went to 37 points last night. Match versus Washington. If all these guys are ruled out and he gets the start, potentially could be in play at a 2x multiplier. Kind of check to see where things are at. Like, it's nice. You can look over on lineup HQ, know and do all this math in your head. Like, it's a mix between FanDuel and DraftKings, but you can kind of use either and get a general number from them. So if we think that if he has a median projection of 30 points, anytime you're always shooting for 60 for median projections. Right around 60 is where you're at. So if we have him up to 30 because of the increase in minutes against Washington, if he's showing up on 30, he's definitely in play for tournaments. If he's at 25, still in play for tournaments. You can kind of check out the ceiling projection too. As you can see, his ceiling projection is around 18 right now with the number of minutes we have him playing, because we don't know about Harris. We don't know about a few guys. He's definitely a guy that's in play for tournaments. So that's kind of what I look at, kind of what I check for when I'm looking at tournament lineups over on Superdraft. So just kind of giving you a little bit of background there. But forward, like I said, these 3 guys probably remain cash game core. These guys, Kawhi, we don't know if he's going to end up playing, which also could change things. Lou Williams is a fairly high multiplier. So is Serge. So is Reggie Jackson. So is Pat Bev. Like, someone's going to end up getting there on the team. And you kind of want to throw one of those guys in almost every single lineup. But guys to look at here, Jimmy Butler lowered his multiplier, not giving you a huge ceiling of 67, but giving you a pretty decent floor, pretty decent median outcome here. John Collins already went over that. Sadiq Bey, we saw what happened the other night with all the injuries, with him getting the start and with him going absolutely wild. I think he ended up with 39.25 DK points because he shot 7 for 9 from beyond the arc at one point. I'm not sure where he ended the game, but huge multiplier. With this, essentially every single 3-pointer is getting you 6.5 fantasy points. So that's why there's kind of a high variance with his floor and with his ceiling. If he gets hot, shoots really well, then he can end up crushing. Basley could get some more run if Horford is in fact ruled out, which I didn't see the doubtful, but sounds like that's the case. Grant, multiplier getting a little bit low, but always offers you a little bit of upside, especially in a fast-paced matchup. Oubre, decent multiplier, one of the more inconsistent guys in fantasy, but always offers you that ceiling. So definitely a guy you can use in tournament. Then we get down here, we got guys like Wiggins, guys like Roby, who, if he's going to get the minutes without Horford, then matchup versus Memphis can definitely get it done. Covington can get hot from beyond the arc, can get you stocks at a high multiplier. That gives them a pretty high ceiling. Marcus Morris already kind of went through that. Ben Simmons, they dropped his multiplier, so 1.15. Most of the time, you're not getting there. Always has a chance of a ceiling game like he had the other night. But that was mostly because Embiid was out. So Jaylen Brown, all these guys kind of have a little bit low multipliers. Not really guys I'm looking at. Tobias Harris, normally not going to get you over 40 points, so at a 1.25x multiplier. Again, the magic number is I want 60 with a legit shot at 70 and an outside shot at 80 with every single guy. So if I don't have a fairly decent shot at 70, unless I have a big outside shot at 90, I'm probably not throwing them in my lineups. A guy like Gary Trent Jr., his multiplier is coming down, but he can still put up 40 fantasy points. So at a 1.55x multiplier, a guy that I'll think about in tournaments, but probably not use a ton. Kyle Anderson, kind of the same thing. He can put up 40. A guy like Harrison Barnes can put up 45, 50. Like those are the guys that are using at fairly high multipliers. Or you're going with guys like Sadiq Bey who can get hot and put up an absolutely monster game. But the forward position, these are the guys that I want. Matchup versus Detroit, decent for Chicago. Even Levine at a small multiplier, he can go for 60 points prior to the multiplier. So a guy that will be in some of my builds. And like I said, these other guys are very much in play. The more interesting spot is going to be guard. We have three clear-cut guys. John Wall, just absolute lock and load. You 100% want him in cash. Even a matchup versus Philly, not easy, but he is the main guy in this offense. His multiplier is too high at 1.45. He's a guy you want. Russell Westbrook, even with Beal in the offense, guy that's going to get it done, especially with all the injuries to Denver, makes it a little bit better of a matchup here from a defensive standpoint. 1.25x multiplier gives you a really nice floor, highest floor out of anyone on the entire slate, and a decent ceiling because Westbrook can always go nuts, always put up 50, 60, even potentially 70 points. So you're not going to get much higher of a ceiling outside of John Wall up here, who's just multipliers way too high. And then Dame, even at 1.05x multiplier, he's putting up 50, 60 every single game. He's the entirety of the offense. Matchup versus New Orleans is a lot better now than it was earlier on in the season, running at a higher pace, and it's still not great defensively. So even at this low multiplier, he's probably your cash game guy, but definitely worth a fade in tournaments because he is going to come in around 40 to 60% ownership, which is not uncommon over in Superdraft. But the guy that I think is absolutely the tournament pivot is Edwards. Edwards has been putting up 13 to 20 shots almost every single game. Whether he shoots well is kind of up in the air. And he's been putting up slightly higher fantasy outings recently because he's been getting a lot more blocks, a lot more steals than he generally does. But that's something that can hold true. Indy is a fairly good matchup here. And he's a guy at a 1.75x multiplier that every block or steal or three-pointer you get, you're getting 5.5 to 6.5 points. So those are huge. That's going to cause a lot of volatility, which can really help out in tournaments, especially if he's going to come in at lower ownership than these guys, which this isn't like drafting. Lower ownership means 30% instead of 60%. So Diallo, another guy, 1.4x multiplier. It's come down a little bit too much where he's still in play, especially if he ends up getting started. I know he came off the bench the other night, but if he ends up getting a start, this game ends up staying close. You can bring it back with Morant, hoping that you're getting a full complement in minutes with both of them. And that's kind of how I handle game stacking over on Superdraft. Like other ones, you're kind of doing it because you're hoping for a high-paced game. Superdraft, I'm kind of just hoping for a game that stays close. Like at higher multipliers, like 1.4 to 1.8, you're hoping for 35 minutes. You get 35 minutes at higher multipliers. The probability of different areas of outcome are drastically higher than a guy that, let's say, has added 2x multiplier, like Boogie, for instance, 1.65x multiplier, huge per minute producer, but his minutes, you're hoping for 30. He can get it done at 24. If he gets 20, you're kind of just screwed. So with these guys that you're relying on minutes, you're relying on a close game, that's where I kind of want to bring it back. You're not required to on Superdraft, but on Superdraft, it is advantageous to bring it back on a guy where you're worried about his minutes. So you can throw in Diallo, you can throw in Dort down here, and you can throw in Morant into your same lineup, hoping that if this game stays close, Diallo and Dort are the guys that get the fantasy points over on OKC. Or you can throw in a guy like Kenrich. You can go throw in a guy like Roby without Horford. So that's where I'm kind of stacking up games, are guys with high multipliers where you're needing the game to stay close. So Westbrook and Jokic, hoping the game stays close. Good guys to correlate for each other because they're at high ownership. So I'm planning on doing most of my lineups having either Westbrook and Jokic in, or neither. Hoping that game turns into a blowout in the lineups that have neither, hoping this game stays close in the lineups that have both, because there's not really a point in using one without the other, because you're eating a ton of ownership. And if the game doesn't stay close, then I don't really want either of them in my lineup, because they might get there, but they're not going to get there enough to really just make it worth playing them and eating the high ownership. Other guys here at guard that I think are very much in play: Tatum, even at 1x multiplier, can get it done versus Atlanta. DeLon Wright, kind of up and down, but 1.6x multiplier. Chance of getting 40, still pretty decent in a matchup versus Chicago. So gets 40 to 45. That's giving you 65 to 75 points there at a 1.6x multiplier. Definitely will get it done for you. Definitely worth it in play for tournaments. Already talked about Levine. Curry, again, low multiplier. Can he go for 70? Yes. So he's in play. Beal, low multiplier. Can he go for 70 still? Yes. Oubre, Dort, guys at high multipliers. And then we got Lou Will, who tough matchup versus Utah, but potential of both Kawhi and George being out. So Lou Will at a 1.7x multiplier. He can start, potential at 30 minutes. Going to be the mainstay of that offense. Definitely a guy you can use in tournaments. Mitchell lowered his multiplier all the way down to 1.3. Was at 1.5 at a time. Now it's down at 1.3. I still think he's in play in tournaments. With Conley coming back, definitely a bit of a downgrade in terms of his usage, but he can still put 60 up there, even with everyone back in the game. Brogdon, been a little bit worse recently, lower multiplier, but does have the potential to get hot from beyond the arc, does have the potential to put up 50 points. I think that he's still in play. And then you're just getting to a tough range here. Jaylen Brown, too low of a multiplier for his ceiling. Hero, decent multiplier, but not great. Same thing with White. Both of them go for 40, but if they go for 40, you're only getting 62. But that's maybe in the winning lineup, but not necessarily in the winning lineup. Nwaba, more based on if he ends up getting playing time, which we don't know if that'll end up happening. So the further you get down in these projections, more where it's just not worth it. Like Kenrich is definitely a guy. Dylan Brooks can get super hot at 1.55x multiplier. Can get you there. Like Seth Curry, if Embiid is ruled out, which I don't think we have news on that yet, and likely won't have news for a little bit. But if he is ruled out, then Seth Curry definitely becomes a potential play. Ben Simmons becomes more of a play, but still at the low multiplier, probably not worth it. And then a guy that has a low projection right now, but I have in play, is Man. So again, Kawhi, we don't know if he's going to end up playing. Man's been the consistent guy getting run at the end of the fourth with all these injuries, and he's put up decent outings. Not great, but decent outings. But the multiplier is massive. Like if he gets hot, then he can keep shooting. Put up 28 points the other night. Again, that's not going to quite get you to 60, but it's going to get you close with a 2x multiplier. If he gets a block or a steal or 2 blocks and 2 steals at a 2x multiplier, that adds about 10, 20 to his overall ceiling. So he's a guy that I think is definitely in play, but that's basically it. Like maybe Pritchard could end up getting hot here without Kemba, without Smart, who have already been ruled out. Pritchard could be in for a decent amount of minutes. We look at it, looking at his game log right now, hasn't put up huge outings. He did have a 29-point outing, which at a 2x multiplier, almost 2x multiplier, will probably end up getting it done. But that's kind of it for today's slate. Like, if you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in. But that's today's slate. If you're looking in cash with guards, really simple. It's 3 of these 4 guys, unless some huge news comes out. It's 3 of these 4 guys, and that's where you're going at the forward position. A little bit up in the air. I think right now mine would be Plumlee, Draymond, and Embiid, but any one of these guys are likely fine in cash if you want to. But this is going to be my core because that's just, they have a high floor, high ceiling, high median outcome. So 50% of the time, they should be in the 50s. Embiid, unless he gets in foul trouble, is going to end up with 50-plus points. And then at center, it's super simple. You play Joker. You 100% play Joker in cash. In tournaments, any of these guys are viable. Any of these guys can outscore Joker by 15 points. Joker can get into foul trouble. Joker can have a rough outing. The game can be in complete and total blowout, and maybe it was because Campazzo or because Jamal Murray just got hot from behind the arc and Joker kept dishing it around, getting some decent assists, but Also, not getting a ton of points. We got a question in chat. Do you max enter the 150 contest? If so, by hand? It depends. Every single day, how many different plays there are, because there's diminishing marginal returns if I 150 enter it on some days, because I have such a tight core. Like, yes, I can get every single different combination of those guys, but is it actually helpful? Like, the last 10 or 20 with a top heavy payout might not end up doing that great. So it all depends on every single slate. Today, I'll probably roll with 50, would be my guess, based on how many guys there are. But based on the injuries, if there's a few 2X guys that I think I want to have more lineups of, then I can throw those in there. But yeah, I don't 150 entry max every single day. I generally max out all the cash games, and then kind of based on how much overlay there's going to be, I'll throw in 40 or 50 lineups. And then if there's 20% overlay with a few minutes left, I'll throw in another 40 that I already have pre-made. I don't do them by hand. There's a few different optimizers out there, but the RG one should be coming up soon. I'll be in talks with them, try and get that set up. But yeah, that's basically it. Someone asked about Covington. Covington's fine. Like I said, like higher multiplier, and he has those volatile categories or high upside categories in blocks and steals and in 3-pointers. Like that, he's a 3-and-D guy, so he can get, if he gets 6 stocks and then 4 3-pointers, that is already 50 points right there based on Superdraft scoring. So he's definitely a guy that can get in play, add some boards there. He can crush value. So he's a guy that is definitely in play in tournaments. But I think that should do it, guys. Should be back here on Friday. If you have questions, you can always at me over on Twitter. Maybe I'll get to it. Maybe I won't. It all depends on how much NBA news comes out, because they like to make my life tough, because injuries should be easy to report, but they aren't. But anyways, guys, it's been fun. Thanks for joining me again. Let me know any questions or comments or anything you'd like to see on this show. Happy to have Superdraft stuff up there. Get signed up using the promo code Grinders, get some free money, and hopefully I won't lose a boatload tonight, because that's how DFS goes. Sometimes you make a ton, sometimes you lose a ton. But we're out of here. See you, kids.